Man, Creed suck. They're such a terrible, crappy band, man. You're the only band that sucks more than Creed. Friggin' Nickelback, man. Those two are the most crappy, terrible bands out there. They're just horrible. They write bad songs. I can't take anything you say or anything you like seriously because you like Creed. How many times have you heard that about Creed or any other band that you happen to be a big fan of that happen to have been popular? Well, you know what? I defy that logic. I completely and vehemently disagree with that logic. I think Creed are an outstanding, incredibly talented band with some fantastic records, some fantastic songs. Want to hear more about what I have to say on why I think Creed are underrated and they're a great band? I'll see you inside the video. What is up, everyone, and welcome back. That's right. Today we are talking about why I feel that the band Creed is criminally underrated and highly overlooked and wrongly become this trendy pop culture cliched trope that so many wannabes that are looking for attention drop as a punchline to get them a cheap like or a cheap click. And it's because the band are incredibly talented. They really are. You look at all the main musicians in the band: Scott Phillips, Brian Marshall, Mark Tremonti, who have since gone on to form Alter Bridge, which is an absolutely fantastic rock band, one of my favorite current rock bands out there, who've released not a single bad record I can think of. In my opinion, I've liked everything they've done and loved all of it as well. But so many people slam Creed, and they shouldn't, because they're an incredibly talented band, going all the way back to '97 when My Own Prison was released. And it's an outstanding record. There are certainly some flaws with it. The production and the mix has not aged well at all. The vocal effects utilized are very late 90s, with different effects placed on Scott Stapp's voice at points. You'll really notice it in tracks like Torn and Ode. But the guy's got a heck of a voice. His voice is dynamic. He's got different parts to it, different elements, and he has this way of navigating down low and up high and still being able to get this amount of grit and dirt into those parts of his voice that I simply cannot figure out. As a longtime singer who's taken vocal lessons and sang for quite some time now and loves singing that style of stuff, it's frustrating because he manages to get this great grit in his voice that gets overlooked, and I simply don't know how he's doing it. As many different ways as I've tried, there's just something about his voice that he's able to get that grit in these different places, which is really impressive. And while the production on the record may be a bit dated, the songs are still incredibly strong. I've come up with a playlist for you guys to be able to talk about this a bit, and the tracks that we have on the playlist from the first record, from My Own Prison, I wanted to stay away from the singles. I wanted to stay away from the obvious stuff and dive into some deeper cuts. So we've got Ode. Ode is a strong track. It's got really cool heavy riffs to it. Bit of that thrash influence from Mark Tremonti's childhood. and it's got a great groove with some fantastic drumming and some really cool vocal parts. And there's also that midpoint in the chorus where Mark Tremonti and bass player Brian Marshall are locking in together with this really slick riff right at the midpoint of the chorus. Just killer stuff. And the bass and the guitar interplay throughout the entire record is incredibly strong. One of the tracks that I put on the playlist for that record is one of the more ballady to start tracks called Pity for a Dime, my absolute favorite track on the record, believe it or not. And it opens up with this fantastic riff that almost acts as a bass note at points, with the interplay by Brian Marshall, their bass player, to form this beautiful union of sound for Scott to lay these gorgeous vocals. The song builds well, it moves really well, and it also boasts the only real solo on the record, which shows off that Mark really does have some chops, which you certainly hear much more in Alter Bridge and in Mark Tremonti's solo stuff, simply called Tremonti, where he sings more. But they also show the guy's penchant for writing. They show Mark's song-first approach to how he composes tracks, his ear for melody, his ear for different oddball riffs and chord shapes that you wouldn't get from other players, especially at the time period. And you weren't getting these odd and interesting riffs from a lot of other bands back in '97. We were still at the tail end of grunge. And they were one of the first bands to really step out of that and push things in a different way, and to start being able to do it successfully. I had a chance to see Creed twice live in '97. Once on a fantastic emerging artist show with Fuel and Cellophane, and once at the Acoustic Christmas. I think it was put on by DC 101 as well, at the 930 Club in DC, which is also where I saw them with an artist show. Great live band. Had a chance to see them several times. But those are the first two, as they were starting the tour on My Own Prison. And the singles, the big tracks, are the singles and the big tracks for a reason, because they're really good. They have a great mix of technicality and catchiness. And again, at the time, they sounded different. And I can certainly understand the hate when it comes to 1999's incredibly breakout smash, Human Clay, because let's be honest, some of those songs got oversaturated. We all know the one I'm talking about. We all know the one people are going to go, oh man, friggin' Arms Wide Open song. Yes, that one. The song that blew that band up into space. Just put them way up there and allowed that record to sell millions of copies. And suddenly they went from playing modern amphitheaters to arenas. And the thing is, it's not even the best track on the record. I like the track, but because I'm not a father, I can't really identify with those lyrics. But it is a catchy, well-written track, and because of that, and because of the message in that track, so many people talking about their kids and having and finding out about having a child, it blew up, and it had crossover success. I'm hearing non-rock stations play the track. I'm hearing soft rock stations play the track. It's winding up in grocery stores and other retail outlets, which at the time in the late 90s wasn't really doing that as much as they are today. But it's people look at that one and they look at some of the stuff off of Weathered, and they think, oh, that's all the band is because that stuff's big and catchy, and it annoyed the hell out of me because it got played so much. The band sucks, which is just so far from the truth. There are some gems on Human Clay. I've got to talk about the singles here, the first 2 tracks on the record, which were both singles on Human Clay, simply because Are You Ready, even though it does have that kind of goofy countdown chorus, is a really strong track. What If, on the other hand, has a badass riff. The way that track opens up with that really cool harmonic and diving into that big, moving, heavy verse with that really easy going yet strong chorus, it's a killer track. It's heavy, it's ballsy, it's a headbanger. And the fact that it got big and spent a good amount of time on radio play, certainly not the level of friggin' Arms Wide Open, is a testament to it. Most heavier tracks don't necessarily get that kind of mass appeal. But the reason I have to mention those is the first several tracks on the record are really stellar. One of the tracks that I did put on the playlist, and it does follow Pity for a Dime on the playlist, is beautiful. Absolutely love that track. It opens with these fantastic chord shapes, and it has this outstanding vocal passage. The verse vocal, those melodies are so strong, and they're hooking. They just kind of grab into you, and then that chorus gets heavy and it punches you in the gut. Instead of backing off, it applies that pressure, applies that heaviness and that darkness, and really lays it into the listener. And it's an outstanding track. And of course, it follows a track that I have on the playlist as well. It's a little bit later. It's towards the end of the playlist, but it goes into Say I, which is another really dark, moving riff, and has some really strong vocal moments, especially coming out of the chorus into a break. There's just some fantastic points where I wish I could actually talk about them and play them, but we get demonetized immediately if I did. So that's why it's on the playlist. But where Scott navigates into falsetto and then comes down and has these just really outstanding little nuanced vocals. I'll tell you what, if you guys do decide you want me to break some of this stuff down in another video, I'll probably have to put it up on BitChute, but I'd be more than willing to. Might even take a poll or something on it, on what you guys want me to break down track-wise, and just talk about some little sections of songs of what I'm hearing. But that track continues in the wrong way and continues into one of my favorite reflective tracks on the record, Faceless Man. And it was one of my walking I Need to Think songs, and still is one of my walking I Need to Think songs, to be quite honest with you. It's very reflective, it's very introspective, great lyrics, and it's one of those tracks that follows the Creed formula, building up into an outstanding track. And you get that same formula in some places with Alter Bridge, with tracks like Blackbird that are absolutely massive and completely just immense, or tracks like Birds Darker Than Your Wings, or goodness, many others from them, to be honest. Lover off of Fortress as well. But there's so many good tracks on this record, but Never Die right after Faceless Man's another great example. And then of course you've got some of the big ones. You've got Higher, which goes in to wash away those years. And the other track that I do have on the playlist is Inside Us All, which is an awesome track. It's got a fantastic vocal. It's one of my favorite Creed songs to sing. There's just so much of that powerful low register, some really clean, gorgeous vocal melodies. And now the songs are always, they're focused, they're well written, and there's always a mix of technical ability and bombast, or not bombast, but technical ability and fireworks that wrap inside those tracks. And even though Weathered, their third record, continued the blow up of Human Clay, there's still some really good tracks on there that weren't the radio insanity tracks like One Last Breath, which is still a really good song. The first two tracks on that record are bangers, man. You've got Bullets and Freedom Fighter, which are heavy. Got really pounding, punch you in the face riffs with some really cool chorus and break sections. The guys can certainly play. And on top of that, they write some really catchy tracks that have been emulated. That formula that they wound up providing, being able to rap big, powerful vocals with really pleasant vocal melodies, really strong hooks, and still mix in the musicianship and the technicality is really impressive. And it's a big reason why they wound up having the success they did before they wound up breaking up due to internal conflict with the band and the singer, Scott Stapp. So, while so many of you dislike, or so many people like to make fun of the band, really all you're doing is making yourself look silly. Because nothing from a musicianship standpoint, a songwriting standpoint, a ability standpoint, really measures up to They Suck. It measures up to they're a really talented band that so many people just think it's cool to make fun of. And that's more of a pop culture thing and somebody looking for a laugh and trying to look cool as opposed to actually having half a clue about what they're talking about when it comes to music. You might not like the band, and I can certainly understand that. However, not liking the band doesn't mean they suck. Just because you don't like them and you doesn't mean they're bad. Just because you think they suck doesn't mean they suck. It just means you don't like them. And that's one of the biggest things that this comes down to, is it comes down to that incredibly subjective thing called taste. There are a lot of bands out there that I don't like. Not because they're bad bands, but because I don't like the way they sound. You know, I'm a huge, I don't like a lot of brutal death metal. I just don't like that vocal. Doesn't mean the band's bad. It just means it's not my thing. And also, there's a lot of bands out there that are just pure speed. I like things that are a little bit more dynamic. There's bands that are purely slow, very groovy, and I like things that are a little more dynamic. So there's stuff that I don't like, but I don't go out there and say that a band sucks, because that's really not what it is. It's simply my taste. But I highly encourage you to go out and listen to these guys with an objective mindset. Listen to some of these tracks that I've put on the playlist. Some that I truly enjoy. Every one of those tracks are tracks that I go back to frequently. Tracks that I truly enjoy. And if you listen to it objectively, you might wind up having a different outlook. Really curious to hear what you have to say, because I could ramble about this, but there's no point. The summary of it all is I think they're a fantastic band. And I think they get far more hate than they deserve because it's cool, because it's trendy. And it certainly shows just how talented the band members are when you look at Alter Bridge and you look at Tremonti. So, hope you enjoyed it. Hope you might take a different look at the band if you haven't before. Some of you are certainly not going to like the vocals, and that's probably going to be a sticking point. And I can certainly understand that. I like low vocals, so it doesn't bother me at all. But I do want to know what you think. Can't wait to see what you have to say in the comments. Thank you guys. I love you. I appreciate you. You're awesome. If you do like this one, I wouldn't mind if you shared this one a little bit. Just if anything, to piss off the people that like to detract from it. Anyway, thank you guys. I love you. Thank you to my law enforcement, military, veterans, and first responders for what you do every single day. As always, you have been awesome. I have been Baldman. I will see you in the next one. Be excellent to each other and keep head banging.